Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Community Chats. Today, we've got Nick Knighten on the podcast, talking about his internship with Accenture and how that's transformed for him into a full-time job. Let's roll. Hey, Nick. Happy to have you in the studio today. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Why don't you start by going ahead and just kind of introducing yourself to our audience?
Yeah, so my name's Nick Knighten. I am a senior economics and finance major, getting degrees in both. And most recently, I spent this last summer interning for Accenture, their federal services division. And I guess that's what I'm here for today to talk about. But I've got, a bunch of other, experience in finance and in economic research. So
yeah, that's super fascinating. So how did you kind of first find out about the internship opportunity that was opening up at Accenture?
So that's actually kind of funny. I've told everyone that I work with at Accenture about this too. I actually thought it was like a spam ad whenever I first saw it.
That's amazing.
Yeah, because up until, really I saw this, I've always kind of had in my head that after undergrad, I either wanted to go to law school or figure out a way to get into consulting.
Yeah.
And Huntsville hasn't had that many consulting opportunities that you can get into right out of undergrad, really. Mm-hmm. And so, therefore, I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to plan on going to law school. Well, that didn't happen because I saw this and I was like, oh, there's no way. Because I looked up Accenture and, they've got offices in every big city, but I didn't think they would have one in Huntsville. But I was like, you know what? Whatever. I'll apply and see what happens. And sure enough, like 2 weeks later, I got the first of many emails, and
wow.
Went from there.
Yeah, I know that the whole thing of expecting something to be a spam email is that's a fine line to kind of play around with being a college student, because seriously, I mean, I know for me, I get at least a dozen emails a week being like, here's how to make $450 every week easy for no work. And I'm like, I don't know if I can really do that. That kind of seems a little fishy to me.
Yeah, it felt a lot like that, to be honest.
Yeah.
Especially because these days, like the big investment banks and stuff, they have like remote positions. And so anytime you filter by Huntsville, you may be confused and it'll say like, there's a job opening in Huntsville for Goldman Sachs. There obviously isn't. It's an online position. And that was kind of like my thought process going into it, but it obviously wasn't the case.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I mean, if I'm not mistaken, I don't totally know everything, all the details about how Accenture's relationship with like the ITC has developed over time, but their kind of position here is relatively new, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, it's I think it's about a year and a half, something like that. So
yeah, I know that. We've seen out here in the lobby all of the Accenture signs going up, and the I almost want to say billboards. They're not billboards, but they're pretty large. And I remember. I think Juliana was telling me about how it started off just being like they were going up for an event, and then Rigved was just like, I like them. Let's just leave them up. Yeah, and so they've been here ever since, and I think they look great out there.
Oh yeah, no, I remember we whenever we put those out, and then a few days later we came back and after that event, and we were like, oh, they're still up, and somebody was like, yeah, don't ask questions, just let them keep it up.
Yeah, that's great. And so Accenture do they have another location in Huntsville, or is it just right here in the ITC?
So as far as I understand it right now, it's essentially like there are some people that work on site, and then there are most people that like work from home.
Yeah, okay.
And then you kind of come into the I2C for like specific meetings and stuff that need to be in person. But it kind of cycles through those three.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. I think that's something that, if I'm not mistaken, was Intuitive also doing that for a while, where they would have almost like workstations set up here that people could log into remotely.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think it's a good way to kind of embrace like the way we need to start, I think, embracing work from home. And I think that, so it kind of is good timing in that sense.
Yeah, definitely. I know that for me, I'm one of the kind of strange people who was like, man, working from home is so much better. Which with this job I've enjoyed getting to come in and like meet face to face with people.
Oh yeah.
But with school, I really preferred getting to actually sit at home and have my classes and not have to drive in every day.
Oh, yeah.
But having that setup was interesting to me just because of the fact that they were able to have all of their kind of like company computers and then just control them all remotely. So even if your computer at home wasn't necessarily capable of doing everything you needed it to do,
Right.
then that's not actually what you're doing your work on. But yeah, I just thought that was an interesting system. Is Accenture still doing mostly remote, you said?
Yeah, I think that's kind of how they're going right now, just because the like the point that, from my understanding, that we're at, it's just a way to be, more flexible, you know, and deliver more value.
Yeah. And I mean, with being located on a campus, that is also something that's a lot more student friendly.
Yes.
Just because, a lot of students maybe don't actually live here, but they're able to, this is where they can network at.
Exactly.
So, if you're a student who's coming to UAH, but you live in Tennessee and you're just like, I guess I'll make that drive every morning.
Right.
And then, you're coming here and this is where you're making all of your connections. If you're able to, make a connection that lands you a job, then that goes a long way to not have to drive,
Yeah.
an hour and a half into work every morning.
Yeah. No, that was a big point of focus for them, is really figuring out ways to get into, a lot of the things that people are doing on campus,
Mhm.
and to really form a bond with that, so that way they can get some of the best, talent.
Yeah. Working here at the ITC has really opened my eyes in a lot of ways to what universities really do and how, it's not just about the students. Like, there's so much more that's going on behind the scenes. There's so much, there's so many more opportunities that universities have to kind of support a community than just being a place where people can go and take classes. Just that kind of idea of it being a gathering point.
Yeah.
Lends itself to having everyone, who's coming through kind of network and form these connections that, form a network of support for businesses, and then the students kind of get to be the ones who benefit from that in a lot of cases.
Oh, yeah.
What would you say is the thing that surprised you the most when you started working at your position at Accenture?
Ooh. I mean, I don't know. I was so I had no idea of really what to expect, but I think one of the things that really jumped out to me whenever I started working there was how genuinely optimistic and fun loving the culture was.
Oh,
Because I think a lot of times people will assume that consulting is grind, 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 grind all day.
yeah.
And that's really not the case. I even had an interview where I made a comment about wanting to be challenged and stuff.
Mhm.
And I was kind of hinting at I enjoy working a lot. It's fun to me. It's a good challenge.
Mhm.
And the lady who's doing my interview was like, you don't view it like that. We don't view it like that. We really embrace going and having time where you vacation and you take care of yourself and your brain kind of heals in a sense.
Uh-huh.
And you're able to relax. And you can see it in every person that I've talked to, because they also they encourage talking to people that you have no connection to on a daily basis.
Mhm.
If it's an area that you're interested in, but it's completely different from what you're working on, go talk to them. If you're interested
Yeah.
in that. And when you go and talk to those people, even there, like they're super like gung ho like about what they're doing, but then they'll also, at the end of it be like, oh, by the way, I went, wherever, and it was really fun. So if you ever get the chance to, I would highly recommend that.
Yeah.
And just that culture, like Connor, who was kind of my superior all summer, became like my best friend, because like every day after work, he'd like send like a Teams message, be like, hey, like, do you have like a second? Like, I just want to chat about something, and we would just
Wow.
just bro out. So I
That's
think that's
awesome.
the thing that like surprised me the most, was how like I guess like almost just fun that the culture is.
Yeah. Is Accenture originally a U.S. company, or?
So they're owned. So AFS is a wholly owned subsidiary, because of like U.S. government regulations and stuff. But Accenture itself, from my understanding, is owned or incorporated in Ireland.
Okay.
So it's technically a European company, from my understanding.
Gotcha. From what I've heard, there tends to be more of an emphasis on that type of thing in European cultures. And I think that's really fascinating that that's, the approach that they take to things. There's been so much more talk about like mental health in
Right.
the workplace in recent years, even, here in the US. And it's nice to see companies starting to embrace that more. I think it's very true that, companies, it's nice when companies have an understanding that like it's supposed to be a symbiotic relationship, not just in terms of you work for us, we give you money. It's like it's supposed to be, it works best when it's something that's actually like meaningfully beneficial to both parties.
Right.
And, one party's taking care of the other and vice versa. It's not so much a transaction as, like I said, like a network of support.
Right.
And that seems like such a healthy environment. That's definitely something that I found here at the I2C with my own, experiences interning as well. Just because, it's like earlier in the year I had to be like, hey, I'm going to have to just work remotely for like, kind of an indefinite amount of time because I have to, handle some family stuff that, just kind of popped up. And like, that was just totally cool. Like, I was just able to do that and, manage my own life. It wasn't like a lot of companies will kind of expect you to make sacrifices for your job rather than
Right.
realizing that the job is, something you're doing to achieve a greater purpose in your own life.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was going to ask, what do you think the number one thing that prepared you for your internship was?
I think learning, the last 3 years, really how to organize how can I phrase this? Like learning how to organize workflow and not being afraid to embrace doing something in a new way. Because I think that's another thing that Accenture embraces, because, a lot of the stuff that I was doing was, it's something that I guess on the surface, a lot of people would be like, oh, there's only one way to do that. But
Yeah.
I made my, we have like these goals that we had to have for the end of the summer. And I made one of my goals, essentially to figure out how to do this pretty basic process in like a more efficient manner.
Mm-hmm.
And and Connor, who was, like I said, my boss for the summer, he was like, that's a very good idea. And to most people, they'd be like, oh, well, there's only one way to, read a report and write about it or whatever. But that like embracing of not only organizing your workflow, but then also not being afraid to kind of embrace a new way to go about it. I learned that in school because, I think every class is kind of a new challenge on how do I prep for the exams and the projects, keep everything balanced, because a lot of times that one mold that you fall into won't work, that kind of agility. And so, being able to spend 3 years learning how to do that, having, econ and finance, they're similar subjects, but they're very breadthful, I guess.
Yeah.
They cover a lot of different things. And so, having that experience applying different strategies was probably the biggest thing that helped me this summer for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that it's oftentimes, I think what you mentioned about each semester in school being kind of a new challenge where you're trying to figure out, how do I prepare for this? In a lot of ways, I think that it can be difficult to realize that that's one way that school can help you, prepare for an eventual career, just because of the fact that it can be so easy to fall into just a routine with school and do everything the same way. And I think that comes back to bite a lot of people just because it ends up being very much kind of, you learn how to be good at school, but not necessarily you learn how to learn well.
Right.
And then companies end up having to do a lot of kind of deprogramming when they bring on someone who's, a new graduate. They have to explain, no, this is, I understand you were taught this way, but, this is how we actually do it here and how, people actually do it in a workplace. And, there's a kind of a conflict there, an internal conflict for that new hire who's having to reconcile, what they were taught with, how they're actually going to be doing things moving forward.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's, like I said, that was, I think I realized the power of that pretty quickly too, because I think in any environment, when you're given that first assignment, there's always going to be that little bit of oh brother, this is going to be bad. But then you got to take a minute, step back, and just kind of evaluate it. And if you have that experience through college or whatever of being introduced, repetitively to these new environments and having to figure out, okay, will my old framework work? Yes or no? Okay, if it's yes, then we're good. But if no, then how can I change my old framework, or do I need to start completely from scratch?
Yeah.
So being comfortable with that, I think, really prepared me pretty well.
Yeah. And I think another thing is just, I think that's whenever I talk to people who are just starting college or even people who are still in high school sometimes, the thing that I always encourage first and foremost is that, you not look at college as being the place that you're going to learn the most. It's that the internships really are the most important thing, because getting your feet wet, if I always say that college, you will take classes that you will learn a lot from, but to really get the value out of it, you have to be, getting to know your professors, getting to know the people they know, and making those connections, because that's what opens doors for you later on. And so being open to the idea of just being all right, I'm going to get out there. I'm going to, stick my neck out, see what happens. Maybe someone will see me and I'll be able to start learning how people who are further along than me actually do it. And, you really see the most rapid development during those times when you are, actually working under somebody else. And you get a chance to learn a lot about yourself as well, whether or not you really want to go in that direction.
Right.
So I guess kind of on that note, what are some of the ways that starting that internship at Accenture, what did you learn from that about, personally, where did you want to go from there?
So, to be completely honest, I realized that I probably should have changed my degree whenever I was in undergrad, believe it or not, because a lot of what I did was supply chain focused. And I kind of realized that, like I said, whenever I initially went to undergrad, my kind of idea with picking econ and finance was I'd been obsessed with CNBC since I was 5. Yeah. Really, I guess, weird childhood to be obsessed with CNBC, because everyone would be watching SpongeBob, and I'd be I wonder what the 10-year treasury yield is. But But no, so that was my idea, was I was going to go like into investing of some sort.
Yeah.
But then, I saw this opportunity and I was like, well, long form strategy is why I'm interested in investing. So, this also makes sense. And I realized through all that I was super like obsessed with kind of like process improvement and supply chain and stuff through all of the work I did this summer. And so I realized that I probably should have completely changed my degree. So I should have probably done like a supply chain or like a systems engineering kind of thing. But then also not just from that, perspective, but also generally from that experience this summer, I've also realized like just how much fun it is to, be given a really abstract problem. And like, even if you're not at the forefront with the client, like devising that solution because you're an intern, even being able to be like, here's a concept. None of us have ever even heard these words put together in this way. So your task is to go through the internet and figure it out. Like, understand this super niche concept to like a point where people who need advice on it can, trust that you know what you're talking about and that you can, provide value to them in the most efficient way. I've learned that I love that because I love learning about like strategies and teaching, how to do things better. And so it just kind of all fell together and it made me realize, something that seemed like a spam ad ended up, I think making me have a fundamental realization in myself in a sense.
Yeah. That's interesting. Is that kind of what your day-to-day often looks like, is, kind of a lot of research and trying to just grow personally on your knowledge?
Yeah, that's a big part of it. And like I said, I think for me personally, I love it because for a guy who was in between consulting and the law, reading all day is a pretty good gig. But no, that's a lot of it. And then of course, like the what's the word for it? Like the stereotypical consulting stuff, like making PowerPoints. But it really is, there's an art to it, man. I'm serious. I've realized it too because Connor used to like, have like a pitch deck that he'd want me to like kind of proof just real quickly. And he'd be like, so-and-so said that like this should be changed. And I was like, that can't matter. But then he changed it. Like he did like all the changes that this one person had because they all looked like menial. They were like, oh, make this font bigger, yada, yada, yada. And then you get it back and you're like, oh no, this is so much easier on the eyes. And when it's that much easier on the eyes, it makes it, you're more enticed to actually read through it, garner the information and all that. So there's my justification for why PowerPoint art is good. But no, that's that was most of it for sure.
Yeah, definitely sympathize on that. I've done a lot of graphic design type stuff for this position, and then also I'm in tech writing. So
I heard about that.
Yeah. And so I definitely sympathize on the front of being like, man, getting this font size just right, that's important.
It really is.
Yeah, it's
it sounds silly, but at the end of the day, like it's a huge, like especially because I'm super analytically minded, and so whenever like you're first introduced to that, you're like, it can't matter. But see, now I'm in lectures, and I'm like looking at like lecture presentations, and I'm like, man, this stinks.
Yeah.
Like you used one font, you used Times New Roman 11 point for this whole thing. No graphics.
Yeah, no, that is the same experience I've had of just being like, it's interesting how you'll learn one new thing and then you just start noticing it everywhere. It's kind of, you even see it with like little kids. That's the way they do it. And we just kind of never grow out of that, being like, here's this new thing I learned. Now let me apply it to my entire understanding of the world.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's just kind of, it's interesting that people learn that way. And I always get excited when people, are able to find jobs where they're able to just focus on stuff like that and just focus on learning.
Exactly.
Because my other major is philosophy. And
nice.
That's kind of, the whole idea there. I mean, Greek meaning of philosophy is the love of wisdom or the love of knowledge. So, like here at UAH, what they do is they give you loads and loads of electives so that you can just branch out a bunch and learn about things you're interested in when you're doing going through and trying to get a degree in philosophy. Not so much that way for other other programs of study, but and so I've always, from like myself, found that I'm inclined towards that kind of a position where I can just kind of learn about a lot of different things. And that's been great for this job because I get to, have people from all different disciplines come in and tell me about what they do, what they've learned, and I just get to pick up little golden nuggets of wisdom from everyone who comes through. So I understand that now, as you're getting really, really close to graduating, you're looking at this position with Accenture, and you're going to be able to move into a full-time position with them. Is that correct?
Yes.
Awesome. So what was kind of your experience going from interning with them to realizing that it was going to be a viable long-term option?
So I still kind of have imposter syndrome about it, to be completely honest. But so, oh goodness. So I think it actually happened. So we have like exit interviews at the end of the internship, and they framed them as like essentially we'll have, the HR lady who was in charge of like the whole internship process. Well, there were two of them, but one of them would be there, and you'd essentially say, okay, here were like 5 things that I loved, 5 things that, I think could have been done better. And then like any initial like closing remarks. And so, and they're all individual, which seemed, quickly to make sense, but I probably should have been like, well, if that was all that they were going to ask, they could have just done that in like a form or something. But anyways, we got on the meeting, and it was the HR lady, but then there was also this guy who was like the head of some level of recruiting. I hadn't seen him before, but essentially he was like, hey, you're probably wondering why I'm here. It's because you're going to get a full-time job offer.
Wow.
And I was like, I was in shock. I just like, I don't think my face stopped like being like beet red for like an hour or two, because I couldn't believe it in my I started getting like that nervous tap, and I was just like writing down. He was like, so it'll be with blah, 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 and blah, 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 blah. And I was just like writing it all down. I was just freaking out. And, but yeah, so that's when I figured that out. And then it was kind of funny. He was like, so we can tell you everything except your pay, because Huntsville's like a brand new office. So we have no idea how to calculate that yet. I was like, that's fine. I was like, I don't care, because this has been it was so much closer to what I've wanted to do than anything else I've ever interned at.
Yeah.
That I was like, I don't even care, because I love it so much.
Yeah.
So
there's some things that money can't buy you.
Yeah. No. And the ability to, like I was saying, like with that supply chain thing, it was a lot. I say supply chain focused because that wasn't all I did. I learned essentially like 3 different subject areas because it was with 3 different teams throughout the summer. And I don't think anywhere else like you'd get like a supply chain topic, like an internal HR kind of topic, and then like a workflow design topic. And those are 3 things over the course of like 2.5 months. And, because any other internship that I've ever had, like it's a finance internship, it's like, okay, well, get comfortable being on Excel for 6 or 7 hours a day daily. And that's all you're going to do. And this one was so different. But yeah, so that was how I figured out, anyways, get back to the topic. That was how I figured out that I had a full-time job offer.
Yeah, and that's super exciting.
Oh, yeah.
It's really incredible that just about everybody who's come through here has had an opportunity pop up like that for them. It's definitely one of the kind of greatest strengths of the I2C, and just this whole ecosystem we have here. The people who are coming through here are generally looking for, kind of new talent to pick up and hire. And so I guess I'll kind of shift gears slightly and say, looking to the future, what do you expect that to look like? Or maybe what do you hope for that to look like?
So I have no idea.
Just waiting to see what happens.
Yeah, just could be. I mean, I don't think many people do, but no, I'm looking forward to. I'm presuming it will be, like I said, on that kind of supply chain venue.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to that because I think there's always room to improve like process, and that sounds like super bland, but in my opinion, it's not. And so, I'm looking forward to that, and then also, just figuring out, like a lot of stuff like you can't learn about a company in 2.5 months. So like, I mean, they did a phenomenal job, but I think there's always, something. So
yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, it's super exciting to just kind of look at the future of, from my perspective, it's super exciting to look at the future that the I2C and Accenture will have together. It's like I said, they're a great addition to this kind of ecosystem that we've got here, this network of support. And I'm really excited to see what the future holds.
Yeah, no, I look forward to having meetings and stuff in here. Like this summer, I loved it. Yeah, it's a cool building. It's fun to, just chill in. Yeah. But then when you've also, you're doing like important things, obviously, that makes it, I think even more valuable, and more fun to be in.
Yeah, exactly. All right, man. Well, thank you so much for coming down to the studio for a podcast with me. It's been a great chat. I love getting to talk to the other interns here and just kind of hear about their experiences. I hope you the best. Congratulations on the new position and also on graduating soon. And
Thank you, man.
Thanks so much to Nick for coming on the podcast today. It was great to get the chance to chat with another intern from here at the I2C. I'm very excited about the fact his is transforming into a full-time job for him and that he's going to have the opportunity to continue to work with Accenture. It seems like a fantastic position, so I'm eager to see what his future looks like. I'd also like to thank all of you for tuning into the podcast today. You can be on the lookout for the next episode of the Spark Spotlight podcast on our social media pages at UAHI2C on Instagram and Twitter, and the UAH Invention to Innovation Center on Facebook. Onward and upward.